Nixium's neighbors were very annoying when he was young. He always thought that they were out to get him, but he had no proof. Then one day, while he was sitting in his lounge room, the kids from next door burst through his front door wielding some kind of poles. By some coincidence, Nixium found a pole sitting right next to him and embarked on an epic pole fight. Unfortunately, the neighbor was a year older than him and he ended up losing the Great Pole War. After that day, his neighbor became his arch nemesis, although they never did get to have a rematch. When I was 12, I went out to celebrate Halloween with my friends. I was wearing a death costume that covered up my face, and I was getting a little bit too into the idea that nobody could tell who I was. I ran around screaming all the words that you're not allowed to say on YouTube, and I got a lot of attention for it, but I wanted more. So I started to personally insult everybody I ran across, especially friends and their families. I got a lot of negative attention for that, and I loved every bit of it. The problem was my voice stands out a bit, and a lot of those people actually did recognize me. I think 12 years old is about the exact age somebody won't kick your ass for calling them fat after they just gave you free candy. I made a few enemies that night, but it was the best time I ever had trick-or-treating. At Captain School, people often lost things. When their belongings were found, they were usually taken to the lost and found. One day, the principal said that there shouldn't be any lost items. If a student lost something, they would have to pay for it. So the principal hired someone to sit on a bench next to the lost and found. That meant if Captain had something in the lost and found, he would have to buy back the item he lost. It was the dumbest rule at his school.
Robo was working at a food stand putting some Slim Jims and root beer on display. Little boy came running up and said, "I want to get my mummy 2 meat dicks and my dad a beer." Robo just assumed the boy had a speech problem and replied as calmly as possible, "So you want Slim Jims and root beer?" He shook his head, looked down and said, "No, I mean dick and beer. My mum and dad talk about it, but I guess I can't buy that here." Don't you guys just hate it when you go to a food stand and you just can't get dick? Hellbent started his freshman year of high school. He was trying to make friends and attract cute girls. One day in gym class, he was talking to his friend Pringle. Being young, he wanted to look cool and casual, so he put one foot up on a chair and rested his arm on his leg like the cowboys do in Western TV shows. They noticed girls gathering directly across from them in the gym. First 2 girls, then 3, until more than 6 girls were smiling and giggling as they looked at Pringle and Hellbent. After a quick assessment, Pringle discovered the source of their attention and amusement. He leaned in and whispered to Hellbent, "Yo dude, your nutsack is hanging out." Needless to say, it was the longest gym class Hellbent ever had.
Ghost Toast and his mom went to stay at a hotel by a beach for his birthday. The hotel was small, and it was cramped, and it was pretty creepy. They were exhausted once they got up to the room, so they went to bed straight away. When they woke up, the balcony door was open, the closet was open, a chair was missing, and his mom's bag was nowhere to be seen. They didn't even hear a thing.
Civil Spider once got a weird request that turned out to be a huge success. He worked at a pizza place as a waiter when a family came in to celebrate their kid's birthday. Since the kid was a Pokemon fan, he wanted a Pokeball pizza, but Civil Spider didn't know what that was. The father told Civil Spider to put pepperoni on one half, white cheese on the other, goat cheese in the middle, and black olives for the lines. The family loved it, and other customers heard about the idea, so they started asking for the same. Thanks to that kid, Poke Pizza is now a regular menu item every July.
Ladybot's first girlfriend, Sharpie, would always break up with her so she could go out with someone else. First time it happened, she called Ladybot one night and told her that her mum wanted her to break up with her. The reason was because Sharpie's mum wanted her to date a girl. Over the course of a few weeks, Ladybot saw Sharpie hang around another girl. The only joy she ended up getting from it was when her drum major saw them kissing. Ladybot wishes she had a camera to capture her drum major's reaction.
It was 11 o'clock at night when Pringle heard a man scream at the top of his lungs. He screamed so loudly that it got Pringle out of bed and made him peek out his window. He saw the guy screaming at another guy, who was drunk because he could barely stand without wobbling. He yelled, "Do you know who the fuck I am? I will stab you in the face! The man pulled out a pocket knife. The other man just stood there, appearing as though he wasn't comprehending the situation. Other people were there, trying to keep the man calm who was screaming and holding the knife. But the man kept screaming, "Nah, man, fuck this dude, I'll kill him! He ate my shit, he ate all my shit!" That was when Pringle noticed an open pizza box on the bench right outside his building. Turns out that the man wanted to stab the drunk guy over a pizza. But instead of stabbing the guy, the man just stormed off, still screaming about how he was gonna stab the guy in the face. All that over a pizza.
Shima has a cat named Zaffy who is 3 years old, a gift from her boyfriend and his mother. When Zaffy was 7 months old, she was sent to stay at Shima's boyfriend's house so that the cat could learn how to chase mice, many of which were terrorizing the house. The next day, the family woke up to see Shafi tossing a half-dead mouse back and forth. Then, out of nowhere, Shafi just started teabagging the mouse over and over. The mouse was barely alive and had one eye popped out. Shima, her boyfriend, and his mother didn't know what to do.
Gergak was going to a local convenience store to get some super glue for his 3D printing business at school. As he was about to leave his house, some random person called. He said, "Hello, friend. Would you like some dildos or sex toys? Or do you need directions to a nearby strip club?" Being only 10, Gergak innocently asked,
What's a dildo?
The man then noticed how young he was and said, your mom would know." Then he hung up. Gergak was confused, so when he got to the store, he asked the manager,
What's a dildo?
Then she got a really funny smile on her face and turned bright pink. She said, "You'll learn later on." When Gergak got home, he was still really confused, so he looked it up on the computer. He realized why those guys were being so weird.
Hellbent discovered his secret very early on in life. It all started when he was a kid. His mother cooked him beans for dinner one night and his stomach swelled. That night in bed, he couldn't stop farting, but worse than that, he discovered he really liked the smell of his own farts. Whenever his butt trumpet would blast, he would curl up under the covers and smell his bodily fragrances. He enjoyed nothing more than wafting his farts at night when no one else was around. Not even slightly gross.
When Gergak was 9, he was out playing in the woods with his cousin and a neighbor girl who was slightly older. When going on long walks in the forest and the urge came to pee, Gergak would find a bush somewhere far off the path and do his business, rather than walk all the way back home. While they were climbing around on a tree, his cousin proudly announced that he was going to go home to pee, leaving Gergak there with this girl. Gergak climbed over to the girl and said,
"Yeah, he could have just peed in a bush or something. Why did he run back?"
She looked at him for a second, and then she laughed.
Pee in a bush? What are you talking about?
Gergak answered,
I don't know about girls, but I know guys that have done it.
She paused, and then asked Gergak to show her. He told her to wait where she was while he ran into the bushes. Gergak made sure she couldn't see him, and he peed. When he came back, she didn't believe that he had actually gone.
You have to do it right here in front of me if you want me to believe you.
At that moment, Gergak realized that this girl was in it to see his dibbly von dangly. He gave her a funny look, turned around, and he ran like hell back to his cousin's house. Gergak never saw that girl again.
Last June, Spinal Palm and a few friends went to Denver Comic Con. On their third day, they decided to try out a special event called Sci-Fi Speed Dating. It was just a standard speed dating thing, but everyone was in a costume. One of his friends decided to try it because she was looking to get back into the dating scene, but didn't know how to start a conversation. Spinal Palm told her to just be herself and try not to say anything remotely stupid such as, "Do you like milk?" His friend laughed and said she surely wouldn't. Once it was his turn to start the sci-fi speed dating. 14 people were there. He then saw the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, Princess Proton. Once the announcer launched the clock, Spinal Palm had to think of something fast to say. At that point in time, he hadn't been dating in a while. He panicked. With time starting to run out, he just blurted out,
So, do you like milk?
Princess Proton looked at him in complete confusion for the remaining 20 seconds. He bowed his head in shame until the end of the speed date.
When MKLM was in 7th grade, he found his first girlfriend, and he was really happy. But after only 2 weeks of dating her, she had some other girls tell him it was over because her actual boyfriend was getting mad. It turned out she had already been dating the other guy for a year now. She only, quote, dated MKLM because she felt sorry for him because, he didn't have a girlfriend. He was hurt, but he moved on and he found a new girlfriend just a month later. Sometime later on, MKLM was approached by his first girlfriend. She said she wanted to marry MKLM, so her unborn child would have a dad. The biological father had moved to a different state. MKLM politely declined the offer. One time when Dolan was 4 and his sister Ramona was 2, their dad was watching them while they were in the bathtub. Dolan was going through a phase where he wrapped anything he could find in some sort of towel, a blanket, or anything else. He handed his dad something that was covered in bubbles from the bubble bath. He said,
"Here, Daddy, here's a present."
His dad was kind of bored with the phase and said, that's great, kiddo. But he didn't open it. Dolan insisted his dad open the present. So his dad blew off some of the bubbles and discovered that the present he had received was a piece of poop that Ramona had left in the bath. Their dad was so disgusted that he threw it in the toilet and flushed it, washing his hands immediately afterward. Dolan leaned over the toilet to watch the poop go down, saying,
"Bye-bye, poop. Going in the sewers."
Sid and his dad went to a bookstore, and after a good deal of time, his dad found a book he wanted to buy. When they got to the checkout line, his dad leaned forward and started pointing out imaginary flaws in the book, angling for a discount. The girl behind the counter got this really confused look and looked at Sid for help. Sid put his face in his hands, as this went on for a while and his dad was starting to hold up the line. Sid was trying to avoid being associated with him, but was unfortunately standing right next to him. He kept pressuring the girl to lower the price for a whole sequence of nonsense, made-up reasons. Finally, Sid had enough and said,
"Dad, I work in retail, remember? This isn't the Grand Bazaar, you can't haggle prices at a retail store. Either buy the damn book or let's get out of here and stop wasting this poor lady's time."
He scowled at Sid and begrudgingly paid for the book.
when he's not being a Planet Dolan superstar, Zaragamba likes to work construction. For one of his recent jobs, he had to demolish an old house from the 60s. Other than some questionable design choices, the house seemed totally normal. That is until Zaragamba started knocking down the bedroom walls. It turned out the walls were filled with hundreds of severed heads and limbs. Zaragamba almost screamed, until he realized the disturbing body parts were just creepy baby doll parts. He doesn't know who the hell put doll parts in the wall, but it definitely gave him a good scare. One day, Gergak was leaving his girlfriend's place at 1 in the morning. He then tried to call her to see if he had left his sunglasses there. His mom was right next to her on the list, and his big thumb accidentally pressed his mother by mistake. She answered, and apparently she had a question for him anyway. She and the rest of the family were playing Game of Things, and the card she pulled asked, "What should you not do in public?" Gergak was so tired, and he blurted out, "Masturbate." Apparently his mom had the phone on loudspeaker and didn't warn him. His dad, siblings, and his uncle were all there to hear it. Not one family member lets him forget it to this day. Zaragamba was at the mall with a couple of his friends in the early 2000s. It was during Easter time, and the mall had a place where you could get your photo taken with the Easter Bunny, in quotes. When his friends saw this, they dared Zaragamba to wait in line and ask to have his picture taken, with the Easter Bunny pretending to punch him in the stomach. Zaragamba reached the front of the line and he requested to have his photo taken in the unusual pose. But unfortunately, the man in the bunny suit did not go for it and told him to buzz off. But later that year, they decided to try their luck again with Santa, and he was a lot more accommodating.
Hellbent was 16 when his parents signed him up for a youth labor program. He ended up working in a store with one of his friends, Spinal Palm. One day, when it wasn't busy, Hellbent went on a break. While on break, his mom and brothers came in. His mom said, "Oh, look at my baby boy. I remember when he was still in diapers. Poop, 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 poop." That's what he would always say, but now he's a grown man. Oh, the memories. The customers laughed for several minutes, including Spinal Palm. Hellbent was so embarrassed, and he never went into that store again. He still gets annoyed whenever any of his family members bring it up.
Melissa was having a crappy day at school. She'd gotten a bad grade on a test, had a fight with her friend, and to top it all off, had lost her favorite ring. With big storm clouds hanging over her head, she went into the girls' bathroom and noticed a freshman standing over the sink. The freshman was smiling and holding Melissa's missing ring. Melissa stormed and shouted,
Where did you get that from?
The freshman nervously explained that her boyfriend had given it to her. Melissa didn't believe her. She grabbed her by the shoulders and demanded that she'd give it back. As she did this, Melissa's missing ring fell out of her pocket and rolled onto the ground. The freshman pointed to the ring, and Melissa realized she'd made a very embarrassing mistake. She apologized and awkwardly avoided eye contact with her for the rest of the day.
Now, what is the dumbest thing that I have done for money? Well, when I was a kid, I used to do a lot of skateboarding and BMX riding and stuff like that. Now, one day, my friend built this ugly, dinky, unstable ramp in his backyard out of wood. So I go over to his house and he's like, "Dude, come over here and check out this ramp I built." And I look at it and I say, "Dude, that thing looks like a death trap." And he says, "Yeah, it kinda does. I'll pay you $10 if you jump it on your bike." So what did I do, you might be wondering? That's right, I got on my bike and I jumped that ramp. And let me just say, I didn't even get to go off the ramp. As soon as I hit the thing, it just completely collapsed, and I flew over the handlebars, and I slammed into the ground on my face. I got all cut up, and it was gross, and I was bleeding. But you know what? You know what, guys? It was all worth it, because I made the money.
Ladybot was staying over at a friend's house during the school year. With her friend living in another county, they had to take a bus to get to her house. On the bus, all the way in the back where they were going to sit was a really cute girl, Sharpie, and being the useless lesbian Ladybot was, tried to talk to her. Ladybot didn't realize that she had been told to sit down by the bus driver, so when the bus started moving, she ended up falling in Sharpie's lap. Ladybot said,
"I guess I'm falling for you."
In her state of being confused and really embarrassed, she went on to sing, "Hit me baby one more time," as loud as she could. When they got back to her friend's house, Ladybot played the ukulele and sung about how she was gay. She recorded the song and sent it to Sharpie, who eventually thought she was really cute, and they've been dating ever since.
When Mimi gets nervous, she will usually say random words in Japanese and eat her hair. Unfortunately, it happened one time when she was in Japan. She was waiting in a crowded store to buy some things when a man approached her. He asked her where the closest train station was, and Mimi began freaking out because she didn't know Japanese that well. So, she said some random words and took out a piece of her hair and began to munch on it. The man looked at her with a confused and disgusted expression. He thanked her for her help, making Mimi's nervousness worse.
When Sweet Commando was 10, he lived next to a family that had 2 ferocious dogs. One day, the vicious dogs broke through the wooden fence and attacked one of Sweet Commando's dogs. He ran up to his golden retriever as it laid covered in blood. But his dog was in shock and thought he was attacking it, so it bit Sweet Commando's hand so badly that he needed stitches. 7 years later, the evil dogs ended up breaking through the fence again, but this time Sweet Commando's retriever beat the hell out of both of them and they limped back to their yard with their tails between their legs.
So, McKylum had a few cool teachers in high school and late middle school, but there was one that sticks out from the rest. His name was Dr. Owen. He was his 11th grade writer's workshop teacher and his 12th grade AP Lit teacher. He was one of the coolest mofos ever. First off, if you could make a good argument that applies to the entire class, he wouldn't assign homework, although no one ever succeeded. Throughout McKylum's 11th grade year, he learned more about Dr. Owen. He found out he has a book published. It's academic stuff, but it's still pretty rare for a high school teacher. Then he found out that Dr. Owen was in a band and has done solo work. He never performed for McKylum in his class despite asking.
Then, Mikhailin did some extracurricular for extra credit. It was like a cool beat poetry night. Then, at the end of it all, Dr. Owen finally played one of his songs. It was way cool. Then after he played a song or two, he said, "I had these lying around, so help yourself, guys." And now, Mikhailin has one of his albums.
Well, she didn't actually do anything, but when Melissa was still in school, she was called into the principal's office and asked, "What have you done?" She just sat there completely confused. "What were you doing with your laptop in the gym?" Melissa told the principal that whatever it was, she was completely innocent. Her laptop was in the shop at the time. Eventually, he realized that he had the wrong person and apologized profusely. Later on, her friend from the student council came up to her and asked how bad it was. She pointed out that the principal was wrong, and her friend said, "Oh, he must have assumed it was you because you're so good at computers. It didn't sound like you to sell porn to the young kids."
James Shark and his friend were in gym one day and were bored. So they snuck into the girls' locker room and broke into a few lockers. They stole some pads and tampons before sneaking into the boys' locker room. James Shark and his friend began to slip the pads and tampons through the holes in the lockers. Just then, they heard the teacher and all the boys entering the locker room. So, James Shark and his friend dropped the rest of the pads and tampons and tried to back out, but the door had locked behind them. With no other way out, they hid in the teacher's office. When the teacher found them hiding, he sent them to the principal's office. Luckily, the principal only let them off with a warning. She didn't even call their parents.